Jen, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Jen Hoyer, an expert in pre-sort mail services for the past 20 years, is the customer support manager at Corporate Mailing Services, Inc., CMS. At CMS, Jennifer works with customers to improve mail quality and reduce postage costs. Prior to joining the CMS in 2014, Jen worked as the executive customer service manager at Pitney Bowes Pre-Sort Services, managing over 2 million pieces of mail daily. Jen is active in the Postal Customer Council, PCC, and currently serves as industry vice chairman or chairperson for the Greater Baltimore PCC. She is also certified by USPS as a mail design professional. So Jen's going to be talking about the real deal today. In her free time, we can find Jen at the gym where she teaches kettlebell and foundations classes, or is spending time with her daughter Ashley. I'd like to welcome Jen to the program. She was referred to someone who I respect very much in the industry, in the mailing industry, and she said, "I can't do it, but Jen is the one that has to do it for you." And she agreed, thankfully. And she has a great presentation coming up. So with that, I'll hand the mic over to you, Jen.
Okay.
And thank you very much for coming.
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. All right, and as was mentioned, I'm going to be going over the USPS mail design requirements. So we'll be covering a number of different things, including the different classes of mail, some basic design, addressing information, a little bit on barcoding, automation compatibility for letters and flats, the different types of postage, and then some fun stuff at the end with repositionable notes and some customized marketing mail. So there are 5 different classes of mail. So you have Priority Mail Express, first class mail, periodicals, marketing mail, which you may have heard referred to as standard class mail or third class mail, depending upon how long you've been around, and package services. I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the packages and stuff, but mostly I'm going to talk about first class mail and marketing mail. Just going over each of the classes, the Priority Mail Express is the product similar to what you would see if you'd be using like a FedEx or a UPS. This is their overnight service that they deliver 365 days a year, including holidays. There's also the first class mail, which I know that I'm going to be talking in a lot more detail on. This includes anything that would be personal in nature. So anything that has any type of personally identifiable information, like your account number, how much you owe, like a bill or statement. If you handwrite a message and you're sending that out inside the envelope, that is first class mail because that is personal. This class of mail is sealed against postal inspection, so they can't go opening that up and see, ooh, Jen owes $20 or anything like that. And there's different rates available depending upon the shape of the mail. So if it's a smaller piece like a letter, there's one rate, flats are another, and parcels are obviously more postage. You can also get discounts for sorting this mail, which is what I'm going to talk about with the automation piece. That's automation discount pricing. And there's additional services available like certified mail or to track the mail and insurance and such. Periodicals would be your magazines. In order to mail at periodical rates, you need to be approved by the Postal Service to mail your newspaper or magazine. You must at least publish it 4 times a year, and you need to be transmitting information, not sending out like a sales type circular to advertise. Next one I'm going to touch on is marketing mail. This here is what I was saying used to be called standard class mail. The post office a couple years ago changed what they called this class. This is going to be anything where you're going to see the advertising. This is going to be like sales circulars. It could be a solicitation asking for a donation, which would fall most likely under the nonprofit subclass of marketing mail. Nonprofit mail is processed right along with the marketing mail on the same equipment, same standards. It just is a lower rate because you are an eligible organization and you need to be pre-approved by the post office as that eligible organization before you mail in order to get those rates. Marketing mail is not sealed against postal inspection, so they can open that up and make sure your messaging qualifies to mail at these cheaper rates. With first class mail, you're looking at a delivery standard of anywhere between 2 to 5 days, and there's currently proposals in there to possibly extend that with the Postal Service. We'll know more where that settles later this year. But for marketing mail, your delivery standard, you're looking at more like 5 to 14 days. So you're paying a lesser postage rate and you're getting a slower service in return for that rate. So if you want quicker delivery, you're going to pay for that quicker delivery. You have to pre-sort marketing mail and you need to have an IMB barcode on those mail pieces. The flow chart on the right, you're going to see, and I know it's really little on the screen. I did send the presentation over to Mike and Paul so that they will have that to be able to share with you later. But this is a nice little flow chart just to go through and see, is my piece actually going to qualify for standard class mail? Maybe you're sending something out, it's not really personal, maybe in a business aspect, a lot of times privacy notices fall under that. Maybe you have something you're not quite sure. You can walk through here like in a yes and no scenario and go, okay, is this going to qualify for the cheaper postage rate or not? So it's a really nice little tool in my opinion. So you'll have that at your disposal. Package services, I just want to let you know there's 5 different types of subclasses. A lot of times schools may take advantage of the library mail option to mail at those rates. I'm not going to get into a whole lot on package services, but I just want to let you know it's another class of mail as far as mailing those boxes and those larger pieces. Moving on to a little bit of basic design for the mail design, just really basic. It has to be rectangular in shape. And when I say rectangular in shape, I mean we're holding it this way. If you hold it this way and put the address like this, you've just made the piece non-mailable. So just as I said, this is the super basics and at least has to be 3.5 by 5 inches in the dimensions. There are 5 different processing categories for mail. As I was talking some of them before, there's letters, there's flats. So this would be an example of a letter. This bigger piece would be an example of a flat. And then they have machinable parcels, which would be your typical boxes, what you think of when you're getting a box. There's a regular parcel. So that'd be something like if you're mailing a tube with maybe a map or something rolled up inside, or it could be even a mail piece that is uneven in contents, like there's something in the middle making it lumpy, like maybe you're mailing out a pen or something inside a flat envelope. There's also the non-machinable parcel. So this would be like the really big tubes, or if you're mailing like a can of paint or something like that, that would fall into non-machinable parcels. So those are the 5 classes. And as I said, I'm going to focus primarily on the letters and the flats. This here goes over the size and thickness specifications for each type of mail. So there are different sizes that you can mail within each of these classes. Basically, if you exceed any one of these sizes, like a postcard can go up to 4.25 by 6. So this piece would qualify for postcard rates. This piece right here, that's a little bit larger. It's larger than 4.25 by 6. So this is no longer eligible to mail at the postcard rates, which are slightly less than first class postage. They are going to mail as a first class letter. And then if you exceed any of the dimensions that are there for a letter, this includes the thickness component, is going to end up being a flat, even if it's in, say, a normal number 10 size envelope. A lot of times a common thing I will see people try to do is they shove as much as they can in here, and it is no longer within that 1/4 inch maximum, it's bigger. So you're now pushing that into a flat category, even though you have it in a letter envelope. A good way to combat that is just to use a 6x9 envelope. So you're still meeting the letter rates and mailing at cheaper postage, and you're not taking up as much thickness. A note on flats, and I'll touch on this later, just to make sure that they're going to be flexible enough to fit through sorting equipment at the Postal Service, and other standards like it needs to be rectangular, that also applies. Moving on to addressing. The address block, to be totally honest, no one ever taught me how to format a mail piece the proper way until I started working in this industry. When you're addressing a mail piece, you want to think about having the most general information at the bottom and working your way up to the most specific. So the bottom line, you're going to go most general. Okay, somewhere in Baltimore, Maryland is where you're going to find me. Moving up to there, you'll see, okay, I'm at, say, 1625 Connect Avenue. All right, that gets it a little better. Maybe there's a suite number in my building. We can add that on the line above. Above that, you'll know you're going to find me at CMS. My name's Jennifer. And if there's something else that you want to put above that, maybe some non-address data, maybe some manual traditional ACS information for address correction, something like that, that stuff can go way at the top. But as I said, you want to take the most specific and have that at the top, the most general and have that at the bottom. The second example I have in there is with a PO box. I do want to point out that the sorting equipment is going to send your mail to wherever is directly above your city state zip, because it's going to see it first. The equipment reads bottom to top. So if you put the PO box directly above the city state zip, that's where it's going to go. If you decide to put the street address there, so maybe, you know, that building exists, but they use a PO box, they don't get mail there, it's going to try barcoding it to that street address instead of your PO box. So just a little something to pay attention to. On the right hand side, I have some common best practices that you should follow as far as addressing. When I talk on the first one with using uppercase letters, that's encouraged, especially back when I started in this industry 20 years ago. It was definitely something we encouraged everyone to do. The technology has gotten much better. So if you have normal upper and lowercase letters, that doesn't matter as much anymore. I'm going to still say the best practice is all caps, but either way, you're not causing a serious problem any longer. I would avoid the punctuation. I would also make sure it's placed in the correct area. So I'm going to talk in a minute about what that OCR read area means. That's basically the OCR is the optical character reader. That's the equipment that is going to be looking for the address to read it. So I'm going to talk about that, as I said, in just a moment. And just make sure that they are spaced appropriately. There's no extra spacing between lines. You're not abbreviating in places that you shouldn't have abbreviations. Like if you're sending a piece to Ocean City, Maryland, you don't want to put OCMD on the piece because the equipment doesn't know that that is the same place. It just knows Ocean City, Maryland. It doesn't know that little abbreviation that you may be familiar with. And then just to make sure there's no extraneous print that could be interfering with the ability to read that. That includes graphics. Like sometimes I'll see cute little envelopes, like maybe some swirly stuff down in the bottom corner that looks really cute. But if you need me to spray a barcode and you got swirly lines, I'm not going to be able to do that on that piece. You can mail that piece, but you need to put that barcode in the address block to get around it. I was alluding to a couple of these issues a moment ago, but this slide just talks about some common pitfalls that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of business mailers make these mistakes, and just some best practices to try and avoid. The first one you're going to see, it has a background pattern. This is really common when people are mailing out checks. A lot of times you'll have that nice security backing on the check, so you can't, like, you know, copy it and try and deposit it twice or anything like that. However, it doesn't make it very nice for reading the address. What I encourage people to do is one of two things. Either use a knockout box on your check stock where you're going to print the address, so that way that security backing is omitted only from that space where you're going to print the address. A second option would be to use a cover sheet in front of the check, so that way you take out the need and you just put it on regular copier paper. The second one, moving right, you're going to see underline and bold print. A lot of times you're going to see stuff on forms that have lines, and then you got to fill in information. And even if you type that, those lines are just messing with the sorter's ability to read stuff. It's that extraneous print that's messing it up. And a lot of times bold characters make things thicker and wider. This is just a camera on an equipment that is saying, okay, this is what a letter specifically looks like. And if it doesn't look like that letter because of the different type of font they're using, there's a chance it may not be read. And you want that piece to be read and get to that delivery address as quickly as possible. What you're going to end up having happen is it's going to get pulled out in a manual process if the pieces don't read correctly. I would encourage you to avoid doing handwritten mail on a mail piece. When you're talking about recognizing a character, handwriting gets even more fun to try and read and interpret. Sometimes even nice handwriting in cursive is terrible for trying to recognize a character on equipment. My equipment reads, as I said, it's been getting better, but we're only reading about 5% of handwritten mail, whereas we're reading like 98% of typewritten mail. Your font size matters too. If you get really teeny tiny, the equipment reads at about 25 to 30,000 pieces an hour. So that's multiple pieces every second. If it's really small, you're taking the chance of it not being seen. The middle example shows some extraneous print. Pay to is a common thing, but it could be any type of information. Honestly, I don't know if you can tell, the piece I have here has a box that's falling into the window. So it could be any sort of stuff that happens to be falling into it that's close to your address. The skewed address, that is an issue, especially when you're using address labels. I had a customer, this is about 10 or so years ago now, and they had a large mailing they were doing, and they had a local league for disabled people come in and fix the labels for them. They thought they were doing a really good thing, you know, helping them out, giving them some job opportunities. However, they put all the labels on a skew. And when they gave the mail to me to pre-sort, I was like, I can't read any of this. I need to mail it at full postage. So just to be cognizant of what you're doing and making sure that, you know, it's the best decision in the long run, and knowing that, you know, if they're not on straight, you're not going to, the piece is not going to read on our equipment. And as I'm saying, our equipment, the post office uses the exact same type of sorting equipment as I use. The background color matters. You can see this here, dark blue does not read very well with the contrast. Lights and pastel colors are fine to use for inserts. That's not a problem. Envelope color in the same aspect is an issue. So if we need to spray a barcode and the barcode's not in the address block, it's important to make sure that you're not sending a Christmas card out in a dark red envelope and trying to get automation discounts. That I see somebody do every Christmas. And the last one on the far right, I want to point out is you may try to do everything right, but you also want to make sure that that address is fitting in the window in the envelope and that it's not tapping out of the window. You want to make sure that, you know, the address is visible and can be read. All right, so as I was alluding to earlier, there is the area where you want to place the information or place the address so it can be read. So this is the Notice 67 that everyone received. And I'm just going to go over how to use this notice real quick. So if you have an envelope handy and want to walk through, that is wonderful. If you don't, that's okay too. What you're going to do is you're going to see the notice. You're going to see the little section at the bottom that has the black dotted lines, and there's a little black mark on the corner. You're going to take your envelope and line it up to that black mark on the corner. And what you want to see is you want to see your address fall in this big, huge shaded yellow area. If your address does not fall in that shaded area, I'm going to say you want to look at redesigning that piece, maybe moving that address so it falls in there. Just a couple other things to pay attention to. If barcode needs to be physically printed on the envelope, that little section in the dotted box with the other little yellow field, that's where your barcode needs to go, and that needs to be free of any print or writing. And the third other thing that's important on here is your return address. So your return address should be up here, and it should be not in the yellow shaded area. If it is falling in the yellow shaded area, you run the risk of mailing that piece right back to yourself. Which kind of segues right into the return address. A return address is not required on every mail piece, and the sender's name does not have to be in that mail piece. It can simply be the address, or you can just say claim center and the info. You don't need to say it's ABC Insurance Company Claim Center. As I said, it should be printed outside of the OCR read area. It can also conversely go in the back flap. That's acceptable as well. And it's, as I said, it's not required on everything, but it is required on certain types of mail, typically where the post office doesn't have another method to identify who the mail sender is, or if you're requesting a additional service, like if you want return service requested as your endorsement, they're going to need to know, where do we return the mail to? So this gives you some examples of when it's required, and there's more than what I even have listed. The barcode placement is also important. So there are a couple different places where the barcode can go on the mail piece. In the address block, it can go above the address, like you see in the example, the top example. It can also be located below the address. That is also fine. It is not in one of the pictures, but that's acceptable. Alternately, if you do not have an address block barcode, you can also print the barcode with the MLOCR sorting equipment like I have down in the bottom corner of the envelope, as in the bottom example. Just going over a little bit on the barcodes. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on this. You can go down like a whole rabbit hole. But just to let you know that the barcode that is printed on the piece is going to identify what class of mail it is. If you want any additional services, like if you're asking for full service ACS or for address correction, or if you want to track your mail, that barcode's going to trigger those things to happen. The mailer ID and serial number are information to identify the mailer and a unique tracking information on the piece. And then the routing code at the end, that's going to be your typical zip code information as far as where you want to get the piece delivered. A little bit about postcards, since this may be a very common thing you may be designing. The first thing I'm going to say is always know how your postcard is going to mail out. Are you going to be putting a barcode in the address block? If you are, you have more flexibility in the design. If you're not, then I'm going to go over some information that I have seen time and time again as common pitfalls that people have made, companies have made when sending out a piece. And if you don't design the piece with this in mind, it takes it from being a piece eligible for automation discounts up to a full rate piece. So you lose postage discounts by this not occurring. I'm also going to encourage, when you're doing a postcard, to use an indicia for the postage payment. Postcards are very thin pieces of mail, and oftentimes you're going to, if you're running a meter or if you're running sorting equipment, they have a tendency to double feed. So the less times you need to handle that postcard, the better, which is why I encourage you to get an indicia and print that on the piece if at all possible. When you're not using an address block barcode, there are, as I said, some things to pay attention to. Very common, you're going to find that line going straight down the middle of the postcard to divide it into the two sides. You want to make sure that stops before the area where you need to print the barcode. So stop that at least 5/8 inch from the bottom of the mail piece. Also pay attention to the graphics. If you're doing a piece that's at the postcard rates, you want to make sure that there are no other graphics in that bottom section, because a postcard can be 4 1/4 by 6, and the barcode clear zone is 4 1/4 inches wide. So that's technically the entire bottom 5/8 on a postcard. And when you're doing the piece, if a barcode needs to be sprayed, it's fine to do a nice glossy backing, but make sure it is non-glossy on the address side. So that way a barcode can be printed on the piece and it can be read. When you're printing the addresses on the piece, you're using a different print process than what you're doing on the sorters when you're spraying a barcode. And it has a greater tendency to smear on a glossy surface when you're spraying it on the sorting equipment. Fun little exercise in the middle, hopefully. You can just type your answer in chat. There are 4 different postcards on here to give an example. One of these postcards has to mail at full rate postage. Just put in which one you think that is into chat, if you don't mind. And I can't see chat, so I'm gonna have to take your word. But as we're doing that, on the right, I did include a paper conversion thickness information. So the post office wants to see it at least 007 thick up to 016 thick. I'm going to say don't go with the 017 thickness. If you can see me, this piece here is a little bit more than 017. It's really flimsy. They have a greater chance of double feeding, greater chance of getting damaged in equipment, be it ours, be it the postal service. You want a nice piece arriving to your customer with your message. So I'd say go a little bit heavier on the stock. It's well worth it. And this is just the conversion between cover paper stock and what the post office uses to determine their thickness and hopefully help you. So in chat, if you sat there and you picked letter C, that would be the correct one. This one would have to mail at full rate postage. Reason being is there is no address in the address block, and there is some pretty little pictures where the barcode would need to be sprayed. So this piece would have to mail at full rate postage.
And Dana Huber got that correct.
All right, good job, Dana. As I was talking about our sorting equipment, I just wanted to include a little picture to show you what the equipment is. These are some still shots, so I apologize. Seeing it in action and running is much better. But you can see my operator is loading the pieces. She's doing a pressure sealed self-mailer is what she's loading, so it is definitely a thinner stock. And you can see that the one piece is loading and she's hand feeding it because the thinner pieces and like postcards would fall into that caveat. We need to hand feed to help minimize the chance of it double feeding like we would as a letter. You can see on the top picture on the right, we have that whole big section that you can load up with envelopes and let it run, turn around, do something else, come back. But when you're running something thinner, you need to sit there and make sure that it is feeding properly. As I said earlier, this equipment reads at 25 to 30,000 pieces. So it goes in the front, it does a little U-turn, it comes out the back, and that's where it is reading either the barcode on the piece or it is reading the address, spraying a barcode, and then verifying that the barcode it sprayed was correct. It goes down into the back part of the machine and it comes out the bins you see in the bottom right corner based on predetermined zip code information. That's how our equipment works, and they have some of the exact same equipment at the Postal Service as well. And this is just for processing of letter and letter size mail pieces and postcards. Now to talk a little bit about newsletters and self-mailers. First thing I'm going to say on them is whenever you're designing one, Go to the DMM, the Domestic Mail Manual on the Postal Explorer website, and check your tabbing requirements. There, you can see the little chart that I have there on the right. There are a million different fold options and just as many tabbing options to go with that. So some common stuff to make sure you're doing on these pieces is make sure that folded edge is on the bottom, the open edge is the top. That is a basic requirement if you want anything to mail at a discounted postage rate. Your tabbing material also cannot interfere with the printing of postage or delivery or return address. So like if you think you put Scotch tape and then you got to meter the piece, it's not going to be able to meter over the Scotch tape part. Second little quiz for you. There is a picture on there of a 10-page newsletter. It has 2 staples in the spine and it is folded in half. How many tabs are needed, do you think? Now, I know there's a lot of different ones and I tell you to go look it up. So it's okay, but I'll give you a moment to think about that and put it in. While you're doing that, I just want to go over and let you know that when you are preparing the tabbing and the folding correctly on these pieces, you are going to save on your postage costs. All right, so if you said you need 3 tabs, you are correct. And the correct placement on these pieces is where the little gray sections just appeared. All right, moving on to flat size mail pieces. As I mentioned in the beginning, there are 2 tests to check the flats. These are the Postal Service tests that you can do for them for flexibility and for droop. I'm going to give you what my English interpretation of this that I've told my customers that makes the most sense to me. Basically, think about that flat. If that flat can go into equipment, bend enough to make a U-turn and come out without being damaged, the piece is fine to mail. If the piece cannot do that, it is not going to pass the flexibility test. And if it can't pass the flexibility test, it's not going to pass the deflection test either, which measures the droop, because the rigidness would not allow any droop. So just information to pass along to make sure that you're in compliance as far as that goes. Just talking a little bit on flats, if you are trying to automate them, I don't have one in front of me, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the yellow craft envelopes that have the little clasps on the back. Those clasps do not meet automation requirements. I'm going to give you a little tip that can work around it. Put a piece of Scotch tape over that clasp, and now nothing is protruding from the envelope and you can work around it and get it out. My ideal would be to not order that type of envelope, but there's workarounds. Just don't let the post office know I shared it. Postage payment. There are 3 different types of postage you can mail with. There is pre-canceled stamp mail. A lot of marketers like to use this type of mail because the stamp, they feel people see the stamp, they think it's more personal, even though they're mailing at standard class or marketing or nonprofit rates. People see that, they think it's something important, they'll open it up and take a look at it. And then you see their message. Another option is a meter marking. This is very common with office mail, where you just get envelopes in with no postage information printed on the piece. And then you just meter it on as you go. It has the date on, so sometimes when you're mailing first class things, they like to have the date on the piece. It shows when it mailed. This option gives you that ability. The other option you have is to print the permit imprint on. That's what I was suggesting when you were doing postcards. You need to have this permit set up in advance with the Postal Service, and there are annual fees that are associated with it. Some of that you can negate by mailing at full service, but if you have questions on that, I'll go through that in a little more detail. But I do want to let you know there are a couple types of permits. The example here shows a numbered permit. So it shows Washington, D.C. permit number 1 where it was opened. There are also company style permits. So instead of saying the city and state in that example, it would say ABC Company. And then ABC Company, if they have a location in Washington, D.C. and another in Los Angeles, they can go out and they can order envelopes for it and get bulk discount pricing, split the shipping to the 2 sites, and now they can use the same envelope. There is a third option called a picture permit. I haven't seen a whole lot of usage on the picture permit, but this would be where I think about like your local insurance agent wants to see their face on their indicia. And you can, or it can be a picture of anything really. And you can have that in the indicia, but you're going to be paying additional postage to have that picture in your piece to mail it, but it exists. All right, moving on to some of the different mail types of fun stuff that you can do. This here talks about putting a repositionable note or an RPN onto a mail piece. So you can see an example of that on the picture here with the guy in the pool. The note is something that when you receive it, the idea is it's like a little Post-it note that you can pull off and stick on your fridge and say, okay, I'm going to call this tomorrow or whatever the case is. This needs to be used on marketing mail or periodicals. That's the classes that are eligible. And it needs to either be a letter or flat size piece. The placement needs to be such that it does not interfere with the address information for delivery, the return address, or the postage. It has to be affixed by machine, and there is a specific size that the piece needs to be, and it needs to be purchased from an approved vendor. So if you flip that piece over on the back, the Post-it, you're going to see who the vendor was that supplied it. The bottom picture there shows where the placement needs to be on the piece and the size of the Post-it. Customized market mail is the other fun thing that I wanted to talk about. This would be mailing a mail piece that is not rectangular in shape. So the 2 examples you see on here, you can mail one that's shaped like a cheeseburger, or maybe a boot if you're selling shoes, cowboy boots or something like that. And you want your piece to stand out. So a marketer would use this to get attention. When you're doing this, you cannot take advantage of pre-sort discounts. So you're going to be making that decision that you want to pay to have this piece stand out, and you know you're going to be paying more to get the piece produced, and you're going to be paying more for postage, and the drop shipment discounts that exist for marketing mail, you're not eligible for those either. When you are planning to do any sort of customized market mail, you need to take it to the mail design analyst at the post office to have them review the piece before I'd say before you get it printed. I'd get it approved. There's some things it cannot have on there, like you can't do the ancillary service endorsements like return service requested. You can't attach other stuff like a first class mail piece, like you can't send out a women's shoes thing and attach a bill for shoes they bought the last time to it or something like that. So there's caveats that go with it if you're looking to do it, but just a fun thing that I wanted to share with you. And that's everything that I had. Are there any questions?
Yes. Let's see. Carol King has a few.
Okay.
Let's see.
I know one of the main ones, people were asking if this was going to be available. And Jen, I think like you mentioned, if it's good with you, we can put it up on our shared drive with all the instructors and get it out to them.
Yeah, that is fine with me.
Perfect. And so everyone keep an eye out for that on the printed shared drive probably this afternoon. If you're not a member, shoot me a message with a Google account email and I'll get you signed up.
Carol King had a question. I haven't seen or received reposition notes. Is it gaining popularity?
Honestly, I don't do a whole lot on that here. We don't have the specialized equipment to do it, so I don't see it too often. Every now and again, I'll receive a piece like that at my house, but I don't get a whole lot. I just think it's a neat idea to explore and on your mail piece. Depends what your message is and how it fits in, but I haven't seen a whole lot of usage, but I do find it's interesting. So
One question from this Paul Foster fellow, I don't know who he is, but does grain play a role in the flexibility and automation for flats?
I'm sorry, does what?
Grain.
Yes, not in the flexibility portion, but there's those white sort of plasticish flat envelopes. It's like sort of paper, sort of plastic. I don't know the right word for it. I apologize, but if it's really grainy, the barcode is not going to print legibly. So if you are using that type, you need to make sure that you have that address block IMB on the piece in order for it to be read.
Carol, did we get all your questions? There's another one. I was thinking wedding invites with calligraphy, but figure just first class postage, no manual reading or discount.
Correct. So if you're going to do the calligraphy, it's going to look beautiful. However, you will need to pay full rate postage for that. You're not going to get any discounts.
Any other questions? I've got a few more, but I want to get the audience's questions in first. Couple of things came to mind when I was listening to Jen. Mailers are printers as well, and they need people to run machinery and design and all that other stuff. If you're having trouble getting printers to join your advisory committee, or you need more companies to be able to send your students from, and I'll ask Jen what she thinks about this. Would CMS consider an internship for a student that wants to learn about mailing?
Yeah, I'm sure we would.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Just reach out to me. I'll give you the contact for our HR lady. We're always doing different things to, find, keep, train people. So
And the mailers, there's a ton of them around, and they're hard to find because you see CMS on Jen's building. It doesn't really say what it is unless you're in the business, and then you know who CMS is because they're one of the biggest mailers in the area. But think about that. If you're looking for, and you might want to invite one of them to your advisory board as well, just to give a different perspective. More and more commercial printing companies are adding mailing to their services. So it might be something that you want to look around and see if there are any around your school. How many people bought an envelope printer from what's the name of the company? Anybody using
the MCS one that does the fake handwriting? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's actually a
Exante?
Exante. Yeah, thank you, Carol. Exante. With those envelope printers, you can print full bleed images on the outside of the envelope, but you still have to consider the areas that need to be left alone for address and everything. So just keep that in mind. If somebody asks you to do a mailing for them, you know the questions now you have to ask and the suggestions that you have to make. And they also have, what is that service, Jen, for the mail design?
You can reach out to a mail design analyst at the Postal Service. So if you, on the very last slide, in addition to my contact information, I have information for the mail design or analyst MDA help desk. I have their phone number and their email address. So if you ever have a question on a piece, you can send it there and you can ask them. And they'll get back to you and let you know, hey, this is good, or you need to change XYZ.
Great. One thing, the origin of this presentation came from an idea by that I got from Carol King. I was asking if there's anything that she needed, and she wrote me a letter or wrote me an email and said, yeah, do you know anybody that has information on mail stuff? So if you want to see a certain subject presented in this forum, let us know. We have all the resources that we can get a speaker for just about anything that you want to see. But thank you, Carol for making your suggestion for carrying this mail presentation.
I'd say to that point, make sure you fill out, like we do with all the other ones, we'll be sending out a follow-up survey. That's your time. There's a question there. I think, what would you like to see in future professional development or printed conferences? So just let us know. And like Paul said, I'm sure between us, we'll find somebody who will be able to talk to it.
Yeah, the nice thing now is you can have anybody anywhere in the world do it. So, and a lot of times the people who have big names in the industry, they won't charge for something like this, and they'll take 20 minutes or 30 minutes out of the day to, give you a talk on whatever subject you're looking for. So it's kind of neat. So Jen is local here in Baltimore. Stephanie, the next presenter is Georgia, is from Georgia. So Jen, thank you so much for your presentation. Judy was right. You are the person to deliver that presentation. I'll be sure to let her know that. And thanks again. You're welcome to stick around and view some more of the presentations, but thank you for giving your time.
Thank you.
Yes, Jen,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, I guess, do you guys want to take a couple minute break? We want to jump right into the next session. I know Stephanie's here, ready to go.
I could get a bottle of water. If you want to take 2 or 3 minutes, I'm dying here.
Sure.
Great.
Actually, I was going to say I got to get one too. I'll grab you one while I do it.
Great.
And we'll be back in a minute or so.
Crystal, has your class settled down any? You're still muted out. I can't hear you.
Yes, they're in ACT lab time, so they're studying. So it's the only time they're quiet is from like 9:20 to 10 o'clock.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, Dan.
Howdy, Paul. How are you?
Good, good. Sorry for the mishap in the link for the session.
No problem.
I wonder if tiny URLs are a problem. It's where you can take a big long URL and crunch it down into a much more manageable format. But I think tiny URL might be a flag for that in some schools.
Gotcha.
It kind of masquerades the URL. Chris, we haven't heard from you. Chris Gilbert. Chase, welcome back. I know I've seen your name before. Kayla, Kayla is
Sorry, Paul, I'm on my phone, so I have limited access and I'm weird. We lost the power this morning and I can't get my Wi-Fi to come back up, so I'm on my phone.
okay. There was another person that was in here that I didn't recognize. Sarah? She doesn't look like she's on anymore. Jason H. Oh, there he is. Jason, what school are you from?
Paul,
Oh,
CTC. Frederick.
gosh.
I was about to say, is
Oh
that
my
a trick
God.
question?
I am
I
losing
know
my
that's going to
mind.
be a trick question.
I was looking at the logo and I was like, man, that looks familiar. And I saw CTC and then I saw Jason H on your window, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Jason.
That's okay.
Mine is a beautiful thing to waste.
Yes. And it goes fast.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
have lists
there-
of lists going.
You've got what?
Lists of lists going to try and keep my brain straight these days.
Yeah. I don't know.
Hey, Paul,
Yes.
there was, I just got on, so I missed the postal information. Is there a document that was shareable that the presenter was giving out or?
Yes.
You have access to?
Yep. Mike's going to post it. Make sure everybody can get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be up on the printed share drive under there's a specific digital folder, that'll go out in the follow-up email. But also the recording of this and the evening session will be available on our website, once it's all processed.
Yeah. The good thing, I mean, this is great with the Zoom. I mean, everybody can attend. Times are flexible.
Mhm.
Things can be shared. It's really, really good.
Can you put the link in the chat, Mike,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
Here, I'll do that in a moment. Let's go ahead and get started with Stephanie. Sorry for the delay, Stephanie.
You're mute. I think you're muted.
I'll get
Bad. Is
brief
that better?
Perfect.
Yep.
Here, a brief introduction for Stephanie. She's an educational leader and design professional, actively building the next generation of creative leaders, which is what we love to hear at Printed. With a background in design and higher education, she has the skills to achieve results and influence change. Stephanie has a track record of building a talented instructor network, making a positive impact on curriculum and students' success. Again, what we love to hear at Printed. She's a strong advocate for creating awareness around quality in the education community. Currently, she's the head of high school initiatives for AIGA Atlanta, and she sits on the Atlanta Public Schools CTAE Advisory Board. And I know that, Stephanie, you said you work with Chameleon, I believe, North Atlanta. So
Yes,
that's great.
I'm so glad to see Mrs. Kane here this morning.
Hey, everybody.
We got Stephanie kind of in an interesting way. She did the evaluation for Miss Payne's 3 teachers, and we just threw it out there. We were just wanted to find out more about what she does, and we told her that we had this program coming up, and she instantly said that she would be interested in doing the program. So we're very thankful that Stephanie was willing to give us her time today.
Absolutely.
My goodness. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Again, working with Mike and Paul, thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm a designer and a design educator. And what we're going to talk about today is really the design thinking process. And so once I share my screen, you guys disappear. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to just unmute your mics and speak up. There's also going to be time at the end for some Q&A. And I also have a lot of resource links available at the end of the presentation that I'll share with Paul and Mike. So that you'll have access to a lot of the things I'm talking about. There's supplemental materials. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So here we go. How's that look? Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Design thinking and human-centered design. So from what I was told from Mike and Paul, I think this falls under, help me, standard graphic design standard 9B or B9, something around.
Yes, B9 specifically.
B9. Okay, good to know. So that's kind of the wheelhouse we're in right now. So most of you may know, because it's part of the standards, about design thinking, and it's really about human-centered design, which is creativity with purpose. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over just basically what the design thinking process is. We're also going to talk about creating like rich classroom environments, because the creative process should be really collaborative. And sometimes that's hard with tight-lipped teenagers. So you got to get them in this space of collaboration and teamwork. And then we're also going to show you, I'm going to show you a couple different design thinking applications that are real world, and then also how to translate those into your classroom. So we're going to go over 3 different touch points this morning. So let's see. So to start, what is design thinking? And design thinking is really a human-centered approach to innovation and problem solving. So you're taking a business problem and you're adding the needs of the people to that. So it's problem solving. It's a way to kind of reframe things. And there's a process to it. You start by gaining empathy. That's one. You have to understand who your audience is and how they're interacting with your product or service. You have to kind of think about reframing that problem, what you've been doing and what could be done better. And then you ideate and iterate on that. And then you also build and prototype and test it. And these are all things that students can do in the classroom too. And it's a really great way to approach multiple things when you're talking about design and business and problem solving. So what does it look like in the classroom? Ooh, that's a bright screen. What does it look like in the classroom? So when I talk about creating rich classroom experiences, it's really about creating inclusive and really collaborative environments. Because again, the creative process is super collaborative. And sometimes it's hard for students to hear feedback and critiques. And so you want to really get them in this space where they're working together and brainstorming and coming up with really great solutions. And I'm sure if you're all educators, sometimes that can be tricky. So a great place to start, number one, when you're talking about the design thinking process, is really about setting ground rules in your class. It's about establishing, you want to talk about with these projects, the intentions and the impact that the projects will have, diversity and inclusivity. You want to talk about all of that. And that's really where it starts with the design thinking process. Again, getting to know your audience, and you're creating this kind of classroom experience. So once your ground rules are set, you talk about what the ground rules are in class. Once they're set, there's a lot of really fun ways to get the kids engaged. And the first one, and again, I can't see most of you on my screen, but if you know this, the first one is improv comedy. So the two of the absolute most genius men on the planet when it comes to improv. So there is a rule in improv, and it's called yes and. So a skill that's really fantastic to teach your kids is yes and. Because in the collaborative process, you never want to shut things down and say no, because what happens? So if you give your kids an opening statement and you say the river is full of fish, and somebody replies, no, it's not, what happens? It completely shuts down that process, right? Everybody clams up, they get fearful, they don't want to talk, they don't want to share their ideas as great as they could be, they just don't want to do it. So it really is something you want to teach them yes and, to build on an idea. So what the process should look like, the collaborative kind of riffing process should look like, is this large statement and this large stream of thought, just generating ideas after generating ideas and coming up with the most absurd ideas you can to kind of go through a creative process and get them open and learning and listening to each other. It's really fantastic. And what does that do? What does the improv process do? It really is teaching them to accept others' ideas, as crazy as they may be or out there as they may be. And it also promotes collaboration, because if they're all working towards a common goal, it promotes that collaboration. And then most importantly, it really builds trust. It starts to build trust between the students on how to accept each other's ideas and make them better. So it's a great kind of piece to start with in the classroom. The second thing is really about empathetic listening, and you want to talk with them, because once again, in this design thinking process, it's a business skill. You want to start with empathetic listening to your consumer, how they're interacting with a product or service. So teaching them empathetic listening, like, hey, I'm listening, or tell me more, or how did that experience make you feel? How did that experience with that product or service make you feel? And it sounds like you're saying this, and is that correct? So you're teaching them, again, those empathetic listening skills. And again, these translate into life too, but again, really important part of the design thinking process. And then the last thing is brainstorming. You probably have all heard about brainstorming, maybe not, but it's a super common term in the design thinking and design space, creative space. It is scientifically proven that parts of your brain used for creativity and analysis, they cannot operate at the same time. So if you're trying to be creative, but you're analyzing what you're doing at the same time, you're shutting that part of your brain off in order to analyze. So with the creative process, what you want to do, and the brainstorming process that you want to teach the kids, it's about quantity over quality. And this goes back again to the improv skills and the empathetic. You want them riffing. You want them coming up with creative idea after creative idea after creative idea. One of the things we always teach is 1 + 1 is 3. So when you get in an environment with partners and you've got a partner with one idea and a partner with another idea, when they start working together, they may come up with this beautiful third idea that they had no idea, they didn't know until they got together and started collaborating. And it's really also important, for them to possibly bring others into their discussion and kind of get their opinion and feedback. Again, it's really a part of the creative process. And we know graphic design and graphic communications is super creative. And so this is a great way to build a rich classroom environment. So just kind of recapping on that, the skill sets that are just really setting ground rules in your class, improving, empathetic listening, brainstorming, and collaboration. Those are 3 great kind of social emotional learning pieces to incorporate into your classroom lessons and discussions. So next we're going to talk about design thinking applications. And these are a few that have taken an idea and then put it through the design thinking process and come out with something even better. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the automotive industry. It's about car manufacturers. And we all know car manufacturers, what do they want to do? They want to sell more cars, right? That's the business problem. But starting with the design thinking process and starting with empathy, maybe they think, well, cars could be expensive, potentially, maybe for a first-time buyer. What about teenagers? What about y'all's audience? In schools, you might have teenagers that want to purchase their first car or work towards buying their first car. So step 1, empathy, thinking about their situation. And then during the ideation and iteration process of design thinking and reframing the problem, what about how can we make it easier to buy a car? So instead of thinking it from a manufacturing, I've got to sell more cars, let's think about it from the human-centered approach. And how can we make it easier for them to buy a car? So this example is all about Volkswagen pay by piece. And I'm going to play a little video for you. Nod right away, Paul, if the sound isn't working. Okay, great. Here we go.
Paying for an entire car feels overwhelming, especially when it's the first car you've ever bought. That's why we came up with Pay by Piece, an idea that turns the smallest Volkswagen, the new Up, into the world's first car you can pay in small parts. Every part has a different price, depending on the actual value, letting the consumer decide how much to pay month to month, giving them the opportunity to adjust it to their other monthly expenses. On the website, an interactive model of the car will turn your monthly payments into actual parts of the car and mark the ones that are already purchased. The whole experience is not only about the consumer, but also involves family and friends. They can tag themselves on parts of the car via Facebook, pay for them, and so turn them into presents. To communicate the idea online, we place web banners at shopping sites like Amazon. Every time you select an item to purchase, the banner will show you which part of the Up you could buy for the same price. Pay by Piece demonstrates how great small can be by creating a completely new car buying experience that is not only visual, but also social.
So once again, that's just one example. The next example we're going to talk about has to do with the medical industry. So there was a case study a while ago, and there was this hospital up in the Northeast that had the top rated doctors, amazing specialists, this incredible elevated care, but their emergency room ratings, the experience in the emergency room, they were getting horrible ratings, and they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't understand why they had these top doctors and top specialists and great equipment, but their emergency room ratings it was horrible. So they hired a consultant company, IDEO, which this is one of the resources. I love IDEO. And they had them walk through the entire process. So IDEO went through the entire process and videotaped it. So they went into the emergency room, they went everything from check-in to their vitals, to the nurse station, then the whole process, going in, waiting for the doctor, check out, everything. So they're sitting there, and after they review the footage, they find that 75% of the video that they took looked like this. So 75% of the time that patient spent in the emergency room, they were waiting in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling. That's a lot of time. So think about it. If you're in the emergency room, it's an emergency probably, right? You're not there for a casual visit. So your nerves are up, you're nervous, the whole thing. So that is not a great experience. So what they did is they went back and they adjusted like maybe some of the appointments in the waiting room. They decreased the time that people would spend in the actual cold hospital bed room in that horrible gown waiting on the doctor to come in. They stopped that. They reduced time frame, and their ratings skyrocketed. So once again, what happens is that they looked at it from the user's experience, what their experience was and how they can improve. That's design thinking process. And IDEO is absolutely one of the most brilliant companies out there doing work on design thinking processes. So in the same vein of healthcare, I'd like to share a project with you called Help, I've Cut Myself, and I Want to Save a Life. And this is about blood donors. And it's really an exciting project. This was done by an alumni at the school where I work. And now he's the creative director for Vimeo. His name is Graham Douglas. So this is several years ago. And the whole thing started because his twin brother had leukemia. And he realized the lack of blood donors out there. I'm going to show you a little bit.
Hi, I'm Graham, and this is my twin brother. 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with leukemia, but thankfully, his life was saved by a complete stranger who had registered to be a marrow donor. He was lucky, though. You see, more than 650,000 people are diagnosed with leukemia and lymphoma every year. And for the most severe cases, like my brother's, a marrow transplant is their last hope. But only about half find a match. Unfortunately, the Marrow Donor Registry is one of the most underrepresented donor programs in the world. And it's no wonder, really. Most people think that registering as a marrow donor is painful and complicated, when really, all it takes is a couple drops of blood. The only pain is actually finding a way to register. Now, you have to either take time out of your busy day to go to a special doctor, or order a registration kit online, pay $16 for it, and while you're at it, pay for the shipping. We've made it so difficult to register. It's amazing that a few good people out there care enough to jump through all these hoops just to save a random person's life. But the fact is, most don't. Imagine, though, how many lives could be saved if registering as a marrow donor wasn't so hard. What if we could turn a normal, everyday act into a chance to save a life? Introducing Help, I Want to Save a Life. A package of over-the-counter bandages that also doubles as a simple marrow donor registry kit. So the next time you cut yourself shaving or shuffling papers or making dinner and you reach for a box of bandages, you'll have a chance to save someone's life. You just put a couple of drops of blood on the swabs, toss it in the prepaid envelope, drop it in the mail, and that's it. You're a potential lifesaver. This simple idea brought together a pretty unlikely pair. Help Remedies, a pharmaceutical company, and DKMS, the world's largest marrow donor registry. And then something pretty amazing happened. The TED Conference chose it as one of their favorite ideas of the year, and even helped us launch it at this year's global conference. And since then, the whole world's helped us spread the word and share our story. And in just a few short months, sales of Helps bandages are already up more than 1,900%. But amongst all these sales figures and media impressions and YouTube hits, there's really only one statistic that matters. Thanks to this little pack of bandages, marrow registrations have nearly tripled. Who would have thought a few paper cuts could make a world of difference and actually save lives?
So great. So those are two examples just of a great way to rethink a problem, a business solution or a problem or service. So how does this translate into the classroom? So how does this translate into working with students on projects? So another reference point I'm going to give you guys is a project from the D School. And it's Stanford's the D School, and they do this work with their students as well, and they have wonderful resources too. And so I provided that link as well. And so there's a project they do, it's called the Gift Giving Project. And it brings up issues, when you're thinking about giving, you think of issues of like duty, love, purchasing the holidays, remembering or honoring people. So there's lots of themes you think about when you're gift giving. And so it can be done in your school with any holiday. It just so happens in Atlanta Public Schools, one of our high schools does this fantastic project with Valentine's Day. And they come up with brilliant results. And they are able to incorporate not just design thinking, but they include marketing and entrepreneurship, and they overlap a lot of different of their career paths. And so it's this fantastic project. And so that's just one of the things you can do with your kids or the kids in your classrooms. And again, I'll provide the resources at the end as well. The other thing you can do is you can have your kids choose a school club, an after-school activity, or a sport. You can talk with them about creating awareness or engagement, increasing in engagement. And you think about, can we make our events more inclusive? Do some individuals have difficulty attending these events, and why? How might we boost the number of participants in the sport or after school activity like chess club or robotics? And how do we increase the supporters for that as well? So your kids can really go through and engage with school culture and run the design thinking process on lots of different things. And again, I've got a few more resources in the chat or the presentation that you can pull from. And it's really great. There are some wonderful resources available for K-12 teachers on the design thinking process. So really, in conclusion, about the design thinking process, there are many opportunities to address major issues next school year with your students. Really, there are. I mean, you can have them address post-pandemic learning issues, environmental issues, social justice issues, and it allows for them to not only have a deeper, meaningful conversations, but they feel like they can tell their own unique stories and learn how to work together and collaborate on these important issues. And so I really want to thank you guys so much. Here's the resource page. Everything I talked about today is reflected on this page. We've got IDEO. There's an amazing resource for Cooper Hewitt for educators. The Stanford D School, I have not only their main link, but I have the gift giving project in there as well for you. And then I'm a part of AIGA Atlanta, but AIGA, American Institute of Graphic Arts, is a national organization, and they're in every single one of your cities. I'm sure we're a very large organization. So get involved with AIGA as well. And they have an amazing educators community called the Design Educators Community, and they have a Slack channel, and it's called AIGA DEC, DEC. And if you are on Slack, it's amazing. And they have this great channel feed with lots of resources and ideas and teachers talking about ways to support and engage their kids. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to be here today. I would love whatever time frame we have, if we do or don't, welcome to do question and answers, or if anybody wants to share some ideas, it's up to Paul and Mike, I'm not sure, but I'm always available. My contact information is in the bottom, the high school ed at atlanta.aiga.org. And you can always connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Drop me a little note. It's just Stephanie-Grunzinski. So thank you guys so much. It's been an honor.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you very much. That was wonderful.
I kind of had a thought. Do you want to answer some questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take the ones from the audience first. I don't want to take any time away from those guys. Anybody in the audience have a question for Stephanie? Okay, going once, going twice. I'll
Yes,
go first.
hang on.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Dan.
You mentioned different ways to get kids involved. Can you give some, I don't know exactly the wording you use. Can you give a couple of examples of how you get them to break out of the shell? I know I like the teach yes and type thing. I kind of do that, ask a lot of open-ended questions, and this year was a year of crickets. Okay, guys, what do you think about that?
Yeah. You know,
Hello? Anybody there?
Yeah, this year I am absolutely amazed at what teachers have done, because it was just quite a year for everybody, and hopefully post-pandemic we can get back to some in-person interactions. But you're right. I just think this past year added another layer of difficulty, of the no video cameras on and just tight-lipped. And so I think that this year was especially difficult. I think with virtual learning, I think that translating improv, maybe some of the breakout rooms when you're working into smaller groups are really super helpful. I've taught the skill actually in a workshop with improv, and I really relied on I'm sure in maybe some of your cities, you have a fantastic improv comedy troupe. We do in Atlanta, it's called Dad's Garage, and they really love engaging with students. So I worked with one of their owners, and they gave me certain improv kind of like fun activities to do with the kids in person. And it was like, okay, like if you're in person, one of the skill sets was, okay, I'm going to say an object and break up into groups of 5. And when I say an object, you have to build it with your bodies. And so it would be like toaster, and they would all run around the room and they would form a toaster. And then you would say something like a trophy, and they would run around and they would build a trophy together. And again, it's kind of hard because it's fun and it's interactive, and you just kind of force them out of their shell a little bit. Of course, there were some kids in the room that were reluctant to move, but once they saw everybody else in their team do it, they did it. But once again, it's just about kind of like finding ways to get them to collaborate. Virtually, it's tricky. I teach as well, but my kids are much older. They're like kids. They're like mid-20s, late 20s. And so it's more about kind of opening up the class. You guys do this as well. Social emotional learning, discussions in class, just trying to get them active and listening and open to each other. So that's the best advice for now. I hope that answered your question, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll jump in here. You might, if you don't teach design, you might have thought that this presentation doesn't really apply to you, but it really is, because you can use that line of questioning and really get your students thinking about how they can make their printed products better, especially if you get a new piece of equipment. What are the things that piece of equipment can do, and how can we change something that was ordinary last year into something extraordinary with this new equipment that we have? So it's definitely for non-designers. production programs and things like that. If anybody has any, does anybody have any lessons on or material on design thinking? Those competencies are right out of the design competency set or skill area.
Paul, can I mention one other thing based on the print?
Sure.
Because, okay, so a perfect example of that is there is a printing firm here in Atlanta that approached, so we all know, we've all been probably seeing construction workers or road workers, and they're spray painting the road as they're going down. And then as soon as they finish that can of spray paint, they throw it in the back of the truck. And then there's certain spray cans that like different colors. So what was happening is the back of the truck was filling up with all these spray cans, and it was hard to tell which color was which. So they just pop open a new one, and it became super wasteful. And so what happened was there was a printing company here in Atlanta, and they thought, okay, let's think about this for a second. How can we rethink the use of that spray paint? And so what they ended up doing is creating just a nozzle system. And then they ended up printing the colors of paint in these translucent bags that would just pop onto the aerosol piece, and they would use that. And they would be able to say what color it was. The material was much more environmentally friendly. So there's a lot of ways for students to interact with printing in different ways, through packaging, any of that. So it does translate. Those design thinking processes, agree with you 100%, definitely translate into the printing process.
Yep. I love the Volkswagen thing. That's pretty funny. I noticed they didn't show the price for the door, the side panel or whatever.
Yeah, the engine, right? Yeah.
The only thing I was disappointed in is they didn't have a print aspect to it. Come on now, they could have printed the stickers in a card or something that the parents could send, and then the kid could tack it up on the wall.
And that's that's a beautiful addendum to the project. Have your students create that. Have your students design birthday cards for themselves that they give their grandparents and say, hey, this is what I want a car, contribute, please. So that's a great addendum. That's a great way to expand the project.
The blood one too was really interesting to me. I mean, just brilliant. Really cool. And they did include printing in that of the package. So
yeah,
I like them both, but I lean towards the printing. Sorry, guilty as charged. Anybody else for questions for Stephanie? I hope you guys enjoyed these presentations as much as we did. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of Stephanie in the future. We're talking about collaborating on a couple things and seeing what we can work out. And AIG is all over the place, so we have an AIG
Baltimore chapter.
Yeah, Baltimore chapter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can use these ideas to reach more design students and printing students.
That's the goal.
Well, you got us back on time. Excellent.
I'm long-winded, but thank you so much. It was a real honor to be here, and I'll be working with Mrs. Payne in Atlanta. We love our Atlanta public school system, so. But anytime you need, happy to help. And there's lots of great resources around the country I can connect you with too.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie.
Stephanie, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
You too.
Mike, do we have time for how do you want to handle this? You want to go right into the?
I was going to say, let's leave it up to everyone else. We can go right into our little roundtable discussion. We can take a 5-minute break. It's up to you guys. Me and Paul don't mind being cut a little short, so. Paul, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I need to stretch my legs. I get a little bit stiff when I sit for too long. So
I think a lot of us have experienced that this year.
Yeah.
We're so used to moving around that when we're virtual, it's like you have to make yourself get up.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a couple minute break here and we'll reconvene. I'll say 10:05.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Yep. I think we're just waiting for Paul and we'll go ahead and get started. Speak the devil. Thank you.
My legs are feeling like pillars of concrete. Good Lord. I don't wish back pain on anybody. I think it's someone poking their voodoo doll in my lower back sometimes. All right. We
My
ready, Mike?
husband has lower back pain too.
I mean, it's just debilitating. This has been going on for a year for me.
Have you ever done the epidural?
The shots, yeah, they were marginally okay. I was at a point where I was going to go have back surgery, but a PT friend of mine said, go try this PT that's really good. And it's been doing okay.
Oh, can you send that to me, please?
Sure. I can do that.
When obviously, you'll try anything.
Oh my God. Well, the surgeon was ready to put me on the table, and he said, "Yeah, you're a perfect candidate." And I was like, I don't like people cutting into my body to do things, especially in the back area. So
Yeah, he's had a lot of injuries back there, but anything, he'll try it. He's looking into acupuncture now too.
Yep. All right, guys, we ready?
Think so.
All right. Let's see. Mike, you want to introduce this section of the program?
Sure.
What you want to do here?
So just kind of very basic printed roundtable discussion. Paul and I will start off with a couple, just updates on the program, anything pertinent for you guys, and then open it up for any questions you guys have for us. Anyone wants to discuss anything. I know that was something that we had feedback on, was more time for just general discussion as opposed to a specific topic. So here we are.
You want to start?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, a couple updates. For your instructor data form, you need professional development hours. And I have documentation from Clemson the last time we went there, all the way up to the present date of GCEA conferences that were held, and also things that we've done here at PrintEd since we've had PrintEd. So I will post that to the group so that if you're looking for that documentation that you might not have, it should be, most of it is in those files that I have up there, or I will have up there. Posted materials, we've been putting a few things up. We put the measurement tools up a couple weeks ago, and then numbering projects we did a couple days ago, and there's a list of other things that I really wanted to put up there as well. I found this thing by Adobe called Learning Fundamentals about InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, and what's XD? User experience, I guess. And it's a really good basic approach to learning the skills of those 4 programs. And it has, it's like teaching them how to draw, you know, how an item-based or a object-based piece of software works. And it was just kind of I thought it would be a good precursor to the classroom in a book or whatever other curriculum you use to teach teach Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign. It's got self-paced activities and stuff like that. I thought it would be a really good resource, and they've actually, it came out in 2020, but they updated it for 2021. So hopefully it'll continue to be available. But I'll put that up. As far as accreditation goes, those of you that completed your accreditation last year, you did it using the old process to prepare notebooks, but use the new process for the final evaluation. And just so you can understand the kinds of things we're doing, digital really makes a difference in the final evaluation because get that young man's name. So the evaluators, we can give them access to the digital curriculum, and they can have, you know, a week window where they can take a look at that stuff. There's no having to get everybody together on the same date at exactly the same time, because we can do it digitally and we can put those things together. I'm sure the administrators appreciate it. The people who serve foods for those kind of things aren't really doing that anymore. So that's one casualty of the digital, going digital. Typically, and Mike and I have been sitting in on these things up to now. And the meeting takes maybe 15, 20 minutes, depending on how much conversation there is. There's also what happened with one of the new accreditations is that the evaluators had some questions about things. So they posted them back to the instructors. And I think that the curriculum got a better look than it usually did in notebook form. Now for this year's programs that are getting ready to be accredited, they use the new process for the entire accreditation. All the forms were fillable PDF files, all curriculum was digital, and the visits and inspections were virtual. We did 3 programs in one day last month. I mean, you can knock these things out like it's you know, like it's nobody's business. So that's one of the benefits of digital accreditation. The other thing is we saw everybody's classroom in person. And that was really cool to see. I mean, we'd be looking around these things and take a look at the wall signs that they had to mark their production areas, and thought it was really cool. Or had the poster that went around maybe a week or so ago that Mike sent. That poster was based on one of the ones we saw in one of the schools.
I was gonna say Angela's on this meeting.
Oh, there she is.
So Angela Perkle, it was her classroom. They had created a poster that inspired me to create that Print Ed specific poster. So I think I already told you, but Angela, thank you again for the inspiration, you and Caitlin.
You're certainly welcome. No problem.
Where is Caitlin? She's absent today.
She is here. Hold on just a minute, Caitlin. I want to see you for a minute.
Hey, Caitlin, how are you? Do you guys have any, I didn't realize you were here. Do you have any comments about the process that can you explain to the teachers what you did for your accreditation?
It's an easier process, really truly is an easier process this time around with the digital format, because you got a live document that you can create and update as much as you can along the way, instead of just a notebook where you've had printed copies in it.
And how long did it take you to knock that out?
How long did it take us to knock it out? About 80 hours total. 80 hours total, because we revamped all of our curriculum, our lesson plans, and everything. So.
How many months was that? How many?
How many months? Months? About 3 months on and off with other things going on with the live work that we've had and other things that,
Three
Um,
3 months.
yeah.
That's it.
hmm
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think having someone to work with too made a big difference.
It did. It did make a difference.
Yeah. So Angela and Caitlin are the first renewal accreditations that were processed with a new method of doing the or doing the entire accreditation. And if you didn't know where they teach, it's West Hall High School in Georgia. So yeah, that's great. I think what Mike and I are starting to recognize is that most of the people who've gone through it before we're going to say they were suffering from printed, what's PSTD?
PTSD.
P-
Find your PTSD.
Yeah, except printed, right? And it's really, I mean, it's really not, it's a lot easier because we cut through a lot of the stuff that held people up, and we can react quicker on when somebody has a question. And what we've been doing is we've been scheduling check-in visits. Crystal's one of the ones we've been doing a couple for, where we arrange to see them every couple weeks or on an as-needed basis, and that's been working out really well as well. And the thing about the digital accreditation, we see everything that these guys do, and they do some fantastic work, and they have interesting methods that they use, and just it's to have an opportunity to see that with your own eyes is really amazing, and it can kick off ideas that we might have, or we might ask if we can share that with the entire group. But you have a network of around 150 programs in the U.S. that are part of this community. So if you have any questions or you need any resources or anything like that, I've been posting to the Google group for the things that for the resources that we wanted to share, and nobody was really looking at it or really using it until the one that I sent a couple days ago about the numbering projects, and 2 people responded. Poole, what's Miss Poole's first name?
Rebecca
Poole. Rebecca Poole, and also somebody from Cuyahoga. I can't remember his name, but he posted something in that numbering folder as well. So, and that was totally under their own power. So, it's interesting what resources we have available and the community that we've built to be able to provide those resources and make it easier for everybody. It's been pretty amazing. So there was another 2 schools that did their initial accreditation under the supervision of, I don't know if she's still here, Shamilian Payne.
Yeah, she actually had something come up. She messaged me, so she had to sign off early. But the 3 teachers will be on this afternoon session.
Okay, great. Just so you know, Mays High School in Atlanta became accredited, and also North Atlanta High School. So Demoris Marable and Shirley Guteau and Daryl Johnson were all new accreditations in the PRNED accreditation. Mike, you have any thoughts or?
I'm mostly just echoing what you've been saying. I've been on the before I started working here at the association and PRNED. I was on the opposite side. I did some of the final evaluations and stuff. So seeing it comparatively, it's just a much more straightforward, quicker process. So we want to make it easier for you, the instructor, so you can get your accreditation and not have to be worrying about all that stuff. So you can focus more on teaching your kids and stuff like that.
Yep. Anybody have any questions or a topic that they'd like to discuss? How can we make things better for you? What can we do to make it not as much of a an event to be able to do it? Oh, Gareth was a little bit inconsistent with how they when accreditations became expired. Some of them were handled. Some of your programs were handled where you received the notice that when it was due, so you were already in expired time at that point. And we kept the accreditations open if you were working on it, but if you weren't working on it, we kind of have to take you off of there. But now, one thing they did a little bit was they warned or they sent a notice out to the programs that were due for a credit or renewal, and they sent it out a year early, so that in the year leading up to the expiration, that would be the time when you would actually be working on your accreditation. And so on the date of the accreditation renewal, they would be done. We just have to have the final evaluation, and that's it. So think about that if you're coming up. If you don't know your renewal date, let me know, and I can tell you what it is. But I think I like handling it that way better because there's no lapse in coverage, and like Angela and Caitlin were saying, it took them a good amount of time. 80 hours is a pretty good amount of time, but over 3 months. I mean, in some of these accreditations, for whatever reason, drag on a long time, and I think most of that has to do with the way that the process was done on paper. And just think back to when you did your last accreditation. How long did you spend in the copier or at the printer, printing stuff out that you had to put in your notebook? I mean, it's completely eliminated now. And you can actually, I think you can see your progress more when you do it digitally, because the folders fill up, and you can measure how much you've done in a certain period of time. So it's been nothing but good so far. Any questions? Any comments?
Paul, what is the industry doing to increase the visibility and the across the nation for print ed?
I sit on a lot of boards that have to do with the workforce development, both locally and nationally, and we're raising the recognition of print ed as a whole by being on those boards, and we're also participating in projects that those organizations have. One of the ones that I'm involved with now is you've seen these programs that have been used to recruit students in the past, and Gareth did one a couple years back, and then what's the name of that organization? Graphic Communications
Education Association.
No, not GCEA. It's Mike, help me out. Graphic Communications.
Oh, the graphic communication, the Workforce Coalition.
Right, the Workforce Coalition.
GCWC.
Yeah. So they did a survey a couple months back, and they surveyed employers and teachers and parents and counselors, and the response that they got is the same as it always was. They recommended that counselors be used to distribute material, which is fine. The industry had to change its appearance or its reputation, I guess. But it was all the same answers. And I got to thinking that why don't we ask the people who are actually going through the process to tell us why they did what they did? So why not survey the kids, the incoming ninth graders, that sign up for graphic communications to say, look, why did you pick this? And I think that's going to be a lot more effective than adults offering what they think is going on, as opposed to the kids who lived this, and they can express themselves in a manner that allows them to share their story about why they picked the program that they picked. I think that's gonna. I hope it has an effect on recruiting. I think it will have an effect on recruiting, because once we find out why they did what they did, then we can backtrack and find out what the organization did to recruit those students and get them in line to take those classes, and hopefully be able to improve the whole system. I don't know if many of you had seen, pardon me while I dig through my papers. There's a series of 4 articles that that were done by Heidi Tolliver Walker. The first one was Commercial Printing's Aging Workforce. It's not somebody else's problem to solve. The next one was Commercial Printing's Aging. Oh, that's the same. Nope, I had doubles. Sorry about that. The next one is Insights into Dwindling Workforce Development Pipeline, Graphic Arts Teachers' Perspective. And then Graphic Arts Teachers, the printing industry can do more to help keep the talent pipeline alive. And then the last one was Graphic Arts Teachers to Printers, We Need You. Did anybody fill out that survey from, that informal survey from the gentleman at PGCF? I think it was Jeff White. Anybody get a request to fill that out? It's just an impromptu kind of survey. I don't know how many he actually talked to, but these articles are due on at the whattheythink.com. And if you look for Jeff White, it should bring up all the articles that are there. But one of the things about the high schools in the industry is that if they're not print ed accredited, they usually go with what they know. They concentrate on their main talent, which I can understand completely. And if you look at the responses of the instructors, they were all over the place, all of them valid, but they were all over the place. And I think the one thing that keeps us moving forward and being able to address the relationship between the industry and the classrooms is have something that we have in common, that we can agree on, that we have in common, and let that drive the development process. And that would be print ed, and the competencies being that framework that we can agree on. All of that is it's possible to create professional development like the one we're having today, and be able to serve people with information that's relevant for them. And it's just at the beginning of our efforts in making the relationship between employers and high school students. So look for that coming up.
Paul,
Yes.
one of the things that I've noticed with my students, they're looking into, when they sign up, a lot of them want to start their own small business through Etsy. And with the digital side that we have, especially with the equipment I have in here, that's where I'm gonna start leaning, is teaching them how to set up a small business through printing. Because that way, I'm gonna use that to entice the kids to show up. They'll have an interest in it, but also at the same time I'm teaching that, I'm also teaching what the real world wants as far as corporations. And to me, we're heading towards a cottage industry. Certain things are still going to be done at the commercial shop, but a lot of it's going to be done inside your home, inside your garage, wherever, because you're able to now, where you weren't able to before, especially on the digital side. I'm not talking a digital printer. I'm talking like the UV printer or the embroidery machine or the digital garment printers. That stuff, you know, even using sublimation or using heat transfer vinyl for t-shirts. And
Kids love it.
and this is where this is where I started hooking the kids into the program, because I'm telling them, hey, there's an opportunity for you to start your own business. You're not going to make a fortune at the beginning, but it's a way for you to do it. And the kids are interested in that. When I tell them, hey, there's jobs for you to go work somewhere, they don't want to hear that. So I'm lucky I have the equipment to go towards the digital side. I'm also lucky that I have an administration that sees the value on the business side, the entrepreneurship.
You know, one of the things in these articles, one of the schools said that they work with, or maybe it was somebody that I spoke with lately, they joined FBLA, and FBLA has a some elements that are graphic communications, and I guess FBLA uses that information to promote their businesses, I guess.
Right.
Has anybody participated in FBLA? No, I was surprised. I had never heard of it before.
Well, web design is part of FBNLA. So that's where your graphic would come in, is through the web design.
No, but they had printing contests.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, there's, you know, I did, you know, things have changed in the 40 years I've been in the graphics. It's like for everybody, it's changed.
Yep.
And the students years ago wouldn't mind doing something that took 20 minutes to do. Today, everything is instantaneously. And when they can do, you know, it just makes a difference. And I think with the print ed, we might down the road need to add something in there on the entrepreneurship, because that will tie into Etsy and all that.
Interesting.
You know, because this is what, you know, there are people that start out with one garment printer and they got 5 and they're looking at my students to go work for them. So it's just another avenue that I can see where it's changing. You know, where you don't need the big storefront. You don't need the 20 employees to do something. And over the last 6 months, we've set up our own website. Like I said, we do the printing for the 72 schools plus the county itself. So we set up our own website. The kids are going to start working on that next year. To that, it goes into ASAANA. So I'm able to get my job tickets off of that. It's a tracking board for the students. So these are all the things that I was introduced to a lot of this at Millersville when we had our print ed conference there.
Yep.
And so I've added to it, I've done it. And so, you know, and with COVID, we've added more stuff in here. And again, I got an administration that's willing to say, Sheldon, you're not producing fast enough. Here's another piece of equipment. Not everybody can say that.
As far as getting the industry more recognized in the schools, did anybody receive this? Look familiar?
Yeah, that was out of the Midwest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It's a overview of the industry, and it has, I mean, it's a beautiful piece, and it's got oops, little box it comes with and little introductory sheet, and then I want to say 7 or 8 brochures. I'll see if I can't get a copy for you guys that attended the conference today. We're working with them on some other things. But I mean, it is a priority for for us to get more noticed by the industry. And I think all the signs are pointing to for us to do that in an effective way. These 4 articles are talking about just what we need to do. So we are actively involved in trying to raise the image of of print ed and the high schools that teach it. So
Yeah, we've got a lot of competition to programs that are getting rid of their equipment and just teaching design. That's happening in my county and across the nation, I think. They're just getting rid of equipment and not teaching printing,
yeah,
unfortunately.
it's interesting because in the last couple of years, in the last decade or so, there's been a push to have designers do more production oriented work. There used to be a thing called a graphic arts, what was it? A production, what's it called? I was one for a while. A production artist who would take the designer's idea and translate it into a format that could be run through the software and have pages be produced consistently. Those responsibilities are being shifted back on the designer, and they really need to know some things about the industry in order for them to be effective. If you have no idea how your design is printed, you can't really do an effective design. I
Paul,
think,
can I talk about that for a second?
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
When I started 13 years ago, our program was failing. We had no applications, hardly. We had barely any students. So we changed to, we sell ourselves as a graphic design program. We teach just as much printing now as we've ever taught. But we sell ourselves because we're selling ourselves to 13-year-olds because we start in the 9th grade and 8th graders are applying to our program, and 8th graders don't want to learn about printing. They want to learn about graphic design. So we sell ourselves as a graphic design program, but we're still teaching as much printing as we've ever taught. I don't have any presses on the floor anymore, but we still teach everything that there is about presses. We have just about all the digital printing equipment we could have, and we run them through all of that. So we're teaching just as much printing, but we're teaching it in a way that if they become graphic designers, they need to know this. So we're still teaching printing, and a lot of my students leave and go work for print shops because, you know, they find that they don't want to sit in front of a computer all day and be designers. But it keeps us alive, and it keeps our program prospering to a point that we're adding a new instructor next year and doubling the size of the program because of the way we're selling it. So
Do you have a lot of kids that are leaving with products, notepads, brochures, posters, business cards? I mean, you know, banners, because that's what mugs. I mean, kids love having something tangible versus, yeah, I designed this on the screen and, oh.
we do a little bit of that. I mean, it's not really our focus. I mean, I teach them how to run the equipment. We run a little bit of it more through production work than we do for their own personal value. The stuff that we do, their projects are all mostly focused on them creating a digital portfolio they can use to either get into college or sell themselves to someone.
I can tell you from my experience in informally surveying the students that go on to college instead of directly into the industry. Universally, they say, I ask, well, how did your high school program prepare you for college? And down to every one of them, they all said it made my first 2 years easy because this is all the stuff that I learned in high school.
Yeah.
And that makes it, it makes a better student because they're interested. They know what it is. They can be successful almost immediately because they've seen this stuff before and even take it beyond and make their whole college experience a lot easier. We are working with some programs around the country with dual enrollment credit. I've got something going on in, I think it's Illinois, that are accepting Introduction to Graphic Communications as a dual enrollment credit. The competencies are the same no matter where they are, and it makes it a lot easier for the college to understand what they've done and award that credit. So I think that's key in the decision to go through a print ed oriented program. Chris, I saw you shake your head a little bit. Is that what your students, is that the experience that your students have?
What was that?
The ones going to college, do they give you
Oh,
that same
yeah, totally. They
Yeah.
say it's so much easier because others who are just picking like graphic design as their bachelor degree field of study, they have no idea of software. So it takes them twice as long, if not 3 times as long, to complete the project. Where my students will finish it quickly. And then they have time to like reflect, critique it, and go back and make revisions if need be. So they find it far easier.
Yeah.
And then I hear from those professors, which is nice to hear from them too. So I was
Yeah.
just checking out Sheldon's link. When you asked me that question, I'm like, oh, he put something, let me go look. But it says I need permission.
Oh, I'll have to open it up because we're in the county. Sometimes I didn't am I blocked? So it might have blocked
You
it.
might have to click like whoever has a link can open it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll change that. But going back to what you said, it's just like I have students that come in, they got some knowledge of the computer. But because when I tell them we need to design the job for the print, it's not a design to look at. They look at me and all of a sudden they start catching on. Oh, because I tell them you're working in 1 dimension, not 3 dimension. Because on print, we're working in a 1 dimension, and they're able to visualize it. It's just like the county has their own designer. She'll send me something. I got to call her up and tell her it doesn't work. It's a gorgeous design, but it doesn't print. Because the proportions are off.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. And
when I worked at Leary Press, it was like that with all the designers that would submit work.
And what I was going to say is the one thing I've noticed over the years as I've been doing more and more printing for the county, more people said to me, we didn't know there was there was a program here to teach it. So it's opened up a lot of eyes at other schools, other businesses in the area. Even though we don't do the printing for businesses, they still get word through their spouses or whatever. Or the students go home and they're wearing a sweatshirt that they made in class. And all of a sudden, people are starting to be aware that we are a viable program and we're actually teaching. And then you got the other side where some of the schools forget that I'm a teacher. I'm not just a printer. And it's the students who do the work. So these are the things that, you know, that I've noticed with the print ed. And when I explain to them what print ed is, that's also I'm able to talk to them about print ed once they realize that it's the students who are doing the work. Because they ask me, well, what standards do you stick to? And I says, we got the industry standards and we also have the print ed standards, which are the same thing. And it's just another way for people to realize what you are doing. Because normally we're just in a dark hole in the school and nobody know, you know, that's the place where it's off limits to everybody in the building until they need you.
Yeah.
Sheldon, do your students make any money?
No,
Or is it
no.
just the experience?
It's the
Okay.
experience. We're only allowed to charge 10% above cost. That money goes back into our program to buy the inks. What that does do is, like if we do a project, if I want the kids to embroider a polo shirt to wear in class as part of their uniform, I don't ask them to pay for the polo shirt. They'll come out of that 10%.
Mhm.
So it's not for the students to be making money, but it helps supplement their fees. So our fee is only $20 for the year. All of us know $20 is not going to pay for any, you know, maybe pays for a mug and a t-shirt and that's about it.
Mhm.
But
And remember, those competencies, we have control over what they say. I mean, if you want to see competencies added or deleted, or you know, another program, maybe another skill area created, let us know. I mean, I don't think you've ever had that kind of access to the goings on. So I mean, Mike and I are the ones that are doing this.
well,
So-
I think if we're going to add something, I don't know what you want, you know, whether it's entrepreneurship as a, you know, or just basically the digital, you know, a total deal of digital output. We had it in the state of Virginia curriculum and then they took it out the following time we met and they went back to offset. And again, it's the digital output that's not that it take anything away, but even on the offset, there's a lot of digital output with the offset now. It's not like you went in the dark room and you made a plate.
Right.
Or if you're doing silk screening. So it's that digital output that has, you know, and I don't care if you tie the digital output to whatever printer you're using has its own program. You're taking your Adobe or whatever design, and then you bring it into the digital output, and then you're just wherever you go, whether it's the embroidery machine or the UV or wide format or the digital copy. And we need to add that and something towards entrepreneurship. And again, I'm not talking about we're become a full force and we're only teaching the business, but the business is part of it. If you go to Clemson or any university, they teach a business side also.
Yep.
And maybe instead of me using, you know, maybe we can get one of these companies to donate or severely make a ordering form that you would see at any print shop. But it doesn't have to be the full version. It could be a small version. And we can bring that into our classroom so we become more prepared to go work at a commercial printer or at a FedEx Express or a Office Depot to, you know, in their start, because they walk in, oh, I know the software, how to take an order and so on and so forth.
We're 20 minutes over on our time.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I mean, I'd love to sit here all day and talk to you guys about stuff. I'm glad you guys stuck around to hear all this. Mike and I have a Zoom conference with a program coming up at 11. So we have to skedaddle a little bit. But thank you so much for staying after and participating in this this program. I hope you like the topics. I thought both of our presenters were fantastic. And if you have, like I said, if you have any ideas, let us know and we'll get somebody to speak about it. The next conference coming up is the SummerCon, our larger offering. We're determining dates as we speak, and it'll be virtual this year. Hopefully, it'll be in person next year. But I don't think schools or organizations will let us in their facilities because of the pandemic. So, any parting thoughts?